So here we have a fuel tap for a GSX-R 750 WS. So this is the 1995 model. Obviously that period of water-cooled GSX-Rs tended to have model updates every year, so I'm not sure what part interchangeability is like. I'm not sure if this would fit on an earlier model or if an earlier tap would fit on this one. Anyway, these are notorious for being crap, basically. They're notorious for leaking and for giving problems. There aren't many resources on the internet explaining how these things work or how you can strip them down and rebuild them, so I thought I would make a little video, and maybe that will help somebody in the future. So first of all, in terms of how it works, this is a vacuum operated fuel tap, so there's no off position. What we have is reserve, on and prime. And for reserve and on, fuel only flows when there is a vacuum applied. There we go, a vacuum applied here, and there's a vacuum hose coming out of the I think it's the carb boot, the intake manifold or whatever it's called, which produces a vacuum there and sucks that out, and that opens up inside a diaphragm, we'll see in a moment, and that allows fuel to flow in either the reserve or the on position. However, there is also a prime position which bypasses that and just allows fuel to flow regardless. So for example, if you've just stripped down your carbs and they're dry and you're trying to get the bike started up, you would put it in the prime position just to get fuel into the carbs. And obviously here's the little doodad, little handle that just goes on there, and you can see that's in prime. Oh, they're a little bit stiff. There we go. That's one of the problems with these, they jam up very easily. That's on, and that is on reserve. So that's the basic principle of it. Let's start taking it apart. So we've got the filter, obviously, and you can see that is higher than that, and so this channel here, that is a channel used when the tap is turned to on, and then once the fuel goes below that level, obviously the engine cuts out because it's starved of fuel, and you then have to turn it to reserve, and then it uses this section here. Bolts to the tank, 2 bolts. You can see we've got a sealing O-ring gasket type thingy around there. So first of all, we need to take out the fuel filter. Be very, very gentle with this because, you know, it's probably 25 years old, whatever. 25, yeah, pretty much 25 years old. So don't grab it up here and start mauling it around because it will snap. So just very gently pinch it at the bottom, give it a little wiggle. You can see it's held in these 2 little tabs here. There we go. So you can see it's directional because you've got the longer tab and the shorter tab. That's alright, that's pretty clean, nothing to worry about there. So there you go. If we just put the handle on for a moment, if you look inside there, you'll be able to see the mechanism turning. So that is on, that one. Remember, that is the longer. No, that's the shorter. Yeah, you get the idea. And that is reserve. And then to prime, you have to kind of push it in a little bit and then turn it because it's spring loaded. We'll see that in a minute. Okay, right, let's start taking this apart. Pop those over there. So first of all, we're going to take out these 2 screws which hold in the tap mechanism. Just apply a bit of pressure to the top here as you do that because it's spring loaded. You don't want your little spring springing all over the garage. 2 screws. There we go. you'll see that the end of these screws is kind of worn away, and the reason for that, just take that out very carefully, there we go. So that's a single piece with this pin coming out of it, and there is a spring which goes over the pin, so let's just put that there. Yeah, so how it works is that you can see these screws simply screw into here, they poke out there, and that's what holds in these, and you can see that track there. So when you turn it around, I said it goes in a little bit for prime. You can see what's happening. It's the tracks. It sort of manipulate it anyway. There you go. That's how that works. By the way, you can see that I am using a Japanese industry standard screwdriver for this job. If you have a look at the screws, I don't know if you'll see this on the camera, but there is. Is that going to focus? Focus. No, it's just a crappy phone camera. There's a tiny little dot just there. A little dot on your cross-headed screw indicates Japanese industry standard, which is not quite the same as Phillips. So I would strongly recommend you investing in a set of GSX screwdrivers. They're not very expensive. It makes it much less likely that you'll chew up your screws. Okay, so that is out. If we have a look in there, you can see here we have a seal, and that is part of a sort of brass ring assembly. So basically how this works is that there's a brass ring that you can see there, I think it's brass, and inside of that is sort of welded to it the rubber O-ring, and obviously the rubber O-ring seals on that as it goes in and prevents any petrol coming out, leaking out the front. Now I haven't replaced one of these, but you can imagine it would be an absolute bitch to do, because the brass bit is just an interference fit, and you can't get around the back of it to knock it out, as you'll see in the middle in a minute. So I guess you just have to sort of prise it out with a screwdriver or something, and obviously the possibilities for damaging it are very, very high. This has previously been rebuilt, not by me, and you can see, if you look very carefully, you'll see just there's a little bit of plastic being broken off in the middle of the central guide, because that should be a circle. It doesn't affect the operation, it's fine, but I think what's happened is that the person who rebuilt this had an awful job trying to get this seal out, and presumably in the process they put a little hook in and tried to yank it out. In the process they've just damaged that plastic bit of it. It doesn't affect the operation of the tap at all. That plastic nylon bit inside, I don't know if that can be got out. Certainly you can't buy that as a replacement part. So basically if that goes, then the tap is junk. Okay, let's take out the back 4 screws for this. Again, this is spring loaded, so just apply a bit of pressure. Yeah, the reason this is off the bike is because it's leaking. It had been professionally rebuilt, as I say, and I'm not moaning at the person who did it, because they did a good job by the looks of it. It's very clean. The person did know what they were doing. The problem is that these are just the crap. If you have a look on the forums, they're universally acknowledged to be hopeless. They just leak. There we go. So just let that off. That's got a little bit more pressure to it because it's got a bigger spring. So there's your spring. There is your diaphragm. We'll talk about how that works in a minute. And that is as far as you can disassemble it. Well, unless you try and take out this seal at the front, which I recommend that you don't attempt unless it's leaking out the front, which this one was originally, actually. So let's just take a look at how this actually works. So what we have here is a diaphragm. You can see that flexes. So fuel goes in from the top here, comes out this hole here, fills up this void, and is prevented from going any further by this O-ring here, which seals in there. So that goes in there, that O-ring presses on there, and that prevents any fuel flowing through. The spring applies some pressure to that to keep the O-ring in place until you apply a vacuum to this. The pressure of that sucks this outwards, it overcomes the strength of the spring, and that just pushes that back like that, opens up the O-ring and allows fuel to flow up in there and then out there. So basically, after the vacuum has been activated, it's just gravity fed after that. There's no pump or anything else. So that is theoretically how this works. However, there's a number of problems with this. Well, the problem is it's rubbish. So first of all, this tap is leaking even when the engine is not running, i.e. there is no vacuum being applied. So that means that this O-ring here is not doing its job properly. It's not, it's not allowing fuel. It's allowing fuel past, basically. That's the issue. So either the O-ring doesn't seat properly. It doesn't feel very convincing actually when you press down on it. It doesn't feel like it's, you just sort of feel like the O-ring is seating. So either the O-ring's a bit rubbish, or the fit is just poor, or the spring isn't strong enough. I don't know. I mean, you don't want the string to be too strong because then the vacuum can't overcome it. That's one problem. Second problem is that this thing is just leaking like a sieve pretty much everywhere, all down there. I mean, obviously with petrol it's a little bit hard to discern where it's coming from, but my impression is that the gasket is just not doing its job on either side actually, because also I've had fuel starting to come out the vacuum outlet as well, which means that, I don't know how it's doing that. So yeah, basically this is, as a collective item, it's junk. So this is a brand new rebuild kit. You can get these off eBay. In the rebuild kit, you normally get let me show you. I'm not going to show you actually because it's a pain in the backside to get back in, but basically you get this, except for the plastic, the nylon section, and that just pushes through the centre section like that. So you've got the gasket on either side. So in the rebuild kit you get one of those, you get new springs, you get new screws usually, you get one of those new seals, which, as I say, I'd strongly advise you not to attempt to replace unless it's absolutely necessary, and you get a new rubber gasket. So yeah, this has already been rebuilt twice. As it happens, it still leaks. It's a little bit annoying. There's no damage to the faces at all, and as I say, it just appears to be just leaking everywhere. The gasket doesn't seem to seal. Well, the other little feature I noticed, and I can't really explain to you how this works because I'm not totally sure, is you'll notice that there's a little vent hole in this nylon piece which lines up with the hole in the gasket, and I believe, yeah, there we go, it lines up with here. So I guess this has got something to do with the operation of the vacuum diaphragm to stop it kind of getting blocked, sort of locked, I guess. Anyway, that's how these look. I'll just wang it back together again for you just in case that's of interest. So first of all, what should we do first? First of all, let's pop this back in, get it all lined up. and the vent hole goes there. Don't know why I'm getting it all lined up, it's all gone out of skew again, it's all gone skew with. You can see it's got the little plastic ridge to indicate where it lines up to. So there we go, that's good. We'll pop the spring on there. This, it doesn't appear to matter which way you put it on actually. When I got it, it was with these things horizontal. So that's there. We'll pop our screws back in. Usual advice for this kind of thing is to nip the screws up in a sort of cross pattern to avoid warping the surface. Oops, a daisy. Don't get too stressed out about it, there's not a lot of pressure on these screws. Make sure you use the right ones, don't use the two that are used to hold in the tap mechanism. Okay, just nip those up. That's all you should need. Obviously very easy to strip these, so be gentle with them. Okay, front end spring goes over the pin. What I meant to say actually, how the prime function works is that when you turn it to prime, this goes in a little bit, and that pin actually presses on the central metal portion of the diaphragm to push the diaphragm open. So that's how the prime function works. Oops. So what we want to do is make sure we get the pin down the kind of eye of that central section, without the spring getting in the way and hiding what we're doing. That's it. Just apply a bit of pressure to that, rotate it until it seats where it should be. There we go, that's it in there. Hold it in. Quite an interesting design actually. Quite ingenious. Now that, I can feel that is engaging on something, so I'm not going to force it. I'm just going to come around, I'm going to put the other one in. Okay, that's gone all the way in. We'll just turn this one a little bit and see if we can get... Oh, very stiff. Doesn't inspire much confidence in the longevity of these. As I say, these are directional, so make sure you line the tabs up correctly. There we go. And voila, that is finished, and equally as useless as it was before I started this process. But as I say, I couldn't find a sort of proper strip down of this on YouTube. There was one, but it was like somebody had sort of sped it up to 5 times the speed, and you couldn't really see what it's doing, so it wasn't very helpful. So there you go, that is how you strip down and rebuild a fuel tap from a GSX-R 750 WS 1995 model. As I say, this looks like a sieve, so options, I can buy a new one. I think they're about £150 now. I don't know what new means. New might mean manufactured in 1995 and sitting on the shelf in Japan since then, which doesn't inspire much confidence. Or I could try to bodge this. I'm wondering if I put some sort of sealant inside the gasket, that might do the trick. Since that would cost me almost nothing to try, it seems worth a shot. Or the only aftermarket manufacturer that I'm aware of that make a replacement is a company in America called Pingle. They get generally okay, if mixed, reviews for the fuel taps. I think plan B will be to buy aftermarket. Anyway, we will see. Hope that is of some help to somebody.